everybody. Welcome to the technical analysis webinar here with AvaTrade. My name is Troy. I'll be presenting. As we get started, please keep in mind a few things. As always, please understand that there's risk with each trade that you take. No one trade is guaranteed to bring you profits, obviously. And also keep in mind that what we cover is not meant to be financial advisement, but is coming from an educational perspective. Now, once we get into the web trader, and if you've used our app, you're probably aware of this as well. There are some risk management tools built into the order window of our app and web trader that make the risk management side of things quite a bit easier. So if we have a trade or two to simulate, we'll point out those features as we go along to show that it calculates your exposure, your potential profit right there before you place your trade. Now, to log into the web trader, which allows you to trade on both MT4 and MT5 accounts from the same location, just log in the upper right-hand corner here from our main website. And the same is true of our app. You can trade on both account types from the same location. Now, before we get started on the technical analysis, we probably want to talk a little bit about the fundamental side of things, just to understand maybe which way the wind is blowing, so to speak. The past few trading days, the trading's been choppy and more to the downside with the equities, the major indices, because of some fear, largely out of the US, about the government shutdown that has occurred. It sounds worse, I think, than what it is, but pretty much every year, the Republicans and the Democrats in the US House and Senate, they have this battle, and it comes down to the final second, and sometimes there's a government shutdown, so to speak, where some of the government functions that are less vital, maybe people aren't getting paychecks for a week or two, or for a few days. I think typically is the most these shutdowns tend to last. It's this time, I think, run over a week, and they're trying to make their political points on both sides. And as is typical, the Democrats would like more money within the budget for different programs and to pass out to people, and the people on the right, the Republicans, are fighting for spending less money and cutting programs. And it's typically the same type of battle every year, regardless of who's in power in the government. So there's been some fear surrounding that. They really seem to be at an impasse, but it seems like that each year, and then eventually it gets solved, and there's a compromise of some sort. In the meantime, it feels like the markets have started to shrug the fear of that off, and I see that the volatility index is down a bit today. Outside of the U.S., I see the German 40 hit an all-time high today. The U.S. indices are trying to follow that direction, and the effects of pending rate cuts in the U.S. that are expected to come because of some weak data besides the government shutdown stress. There's been some weak data out of the U.S. once again, with numbers not as good as expected, slowing down more than expected. And so that 0.25% rate cut that Jerome Powell oversaw with the last FOMC meeting out of the US is looking more and more like people are expecting more rate cuts, maybe even a larger rate cut, and if not, then multiple rate cuts more before the end of the year because of how much things have slowed down. And that brings us to why the markets are pushing up on something like gold. Why are people buying gold so heavily? Well, it's fear of inflation on the US dollar. An interest rate cut occurred, and maybe more rate cuts are expected. It doesn't help that there's a government shutdown, and they're kind of at an impasse right now. So that creates a bit more fear. And so you see more of a reason to buy into gold. And I've been reading some articles lately as well. If you know the phrase FOMO, F-O-M-O, it's an acronym for fear of missing out. There's a lot of maybe sentiment there. Just seeing gold seem to be unstoppable these past months, and people are just jumping on board, wanting to not miss out on this big rise. So I think it's a combination of things with gold, but there certainly are some fundamental things that exist that are legitimate with the government shutdown in the US, with rate cuts looming further maybe in the US with increased expectations of maybe a little bit more aggressiveness with rate cuts being warranted. And if you understand the way interest rates work, the lower the interest rate, the less value than typically the currency has. And so when the interest rates were really high, the US dollar was strengthening like crazy. And as there's talk about cutting interest rates, and they already did one cut now. Recently, the USD was giving back ground to the euro and the pound, etc. Now, these last few days with the fears of the government shutdown situation, the USD did strengthen a bit, but not so much. So we'll keep all of that in mind as we look at different instruments. Now, the technical side of things, and since we have the gold chart up, we can go ahead and look at if there's a signal. There is a signal on gold. The signal is to buy on gold. It doesn't surprise me from a fundamental perspective, as we just talked about. But from a technical perspective, there's a support level that's seen from the folks over at Trading Central who send us these signals. There's a support level seen just above 4,000 at 4,015. And it almost seems crazy that we're talking about 4,000 so quickly, because we were all looking at 3,000. It seems like just a month or two ago saying, maybe it'll reach 3,000, and now we broke above 4,000. So, those of you that bought into gold months ago, you're sitting pretty, or if you're actually holding gold elsewhere, also nice return. Now, we're looking at short-term signals here, and the signal is to buy. Okay, so the technical side of things we can outline ourselves as well. This is a 15-minute chart, and maybe we'll go to 30-minute or 45-minute, 1 hour, to see a bit more out of this. And we can start to draw some lines of support and resistance ourselves. And I can see right here, there's a bit of support. Okay, we'd see once we popped above this price, it sat here as support and went up. As it came back down again, it bounced off this price and went up. That's around 4,026. The support level here, what they call the pivot point in the signal, is a bit lower, 4,015. I'm drawing a line right here, this support level here within the signal. And they've got their pivot line down at 4,015, which we can draw a line there as well. Okay, that's here. And so they're a bit lower on their support, which they're counting this little pullback here maybe as a bit of support within what they're showing. So maybe between the line I drew and the line they have from Trading Central as a resistance here and a support on the pullback, this is maybe a price zone between 415 and 426 that maybe you think there's some support. So if you were going to buy on this signal, the take profit zone is up here above 4,080. Okay, so they're saying look to take profit at 4,080 up to 4,100. Okay, you'd ask, well, why that price? And that's a very good question. Why that price? There is no resistance level from a technical perspective because we're at all-time highs. We already hit all-time highs again today, 4,050, and it pulled back. So why pick 4,100 as the top of your take profit for this short-term type signal? And simply put, it's a round number. Traders many times look at the next round number and say, okay, that's where I'll sell, or just before it. And so somewhere as you start approaching 4,100, they're suggesting you might take profit in this zone as a short-term type move, unless you're hanging on to it, waiting for 5,000 an ounce, which you can do as well. But these signals tend to be shorter-term type moves that we get from Trading Central. So we're looking at here, could it go up another $50 and be in the middle of this zone? We've seen it move $50 already today. Okay, it was at 4,000 this morning. And so here we are at 4,050 now. So it already went up 50. Could it go another 50? I think gold has shown us that it can. Is there fundamental momentum behind this signal? It feels like there is. And we talked about 2 or 3 different driving forces. At some point, this will experience probably a significant pullback. So, you can ride a horse until eventually it stops, right? And so there's no guarantee the signal will carry out, but it looks like it's trying. Okay, this was the all-time high. It came back and tested it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, pulled back here, and now it's testing it a fifth time. It looks like it wants to break it from a technical perspective. So you could, if you want to buy in gold, you could do method A, do a market move right now, get your stop loss down below this support level, somewhere down here. If you like to operate with stop loss, which I tend to do, that's one option, is a market move. And if you do the market move, well, then you can set things up with AvaProtect as well with gold. It's a unique way to pay for protection for periods of time. And so if you want to give it 6 hours or 1 day or 2 days, you can pay for different length protection, and then you don't have to put a stop loss. And you don't have to worry if it spikes down before it goes up. As long as it goes up before your protected time period's over, you don't have to risk anything more than the cost of protection. So with market moves, you have that option. And you see it really looks like it wants to break this resistance. We'll see. So let's say I decide I want to buy on this, but I'm afraid there could be a pullback before it reaches 4,100 range. Okay, so then I could say maybe I want to protect this. Tomorrow would be 1 day. Couple days protection, takes me even further. You see it breaking right now. That's a breakthrough candle. So that now it's an uptrend. That's a classic breakthrough candle. Some people have pending orders that are just kicking in to buy right now. That's a strategy, is when you see a resistance level form, 1, 2, 3 failures, you say, okay, I put a pending order up here. If it breaks, I buy. Okay. Now that it broke the resistance, you can either do a market move or not. Right? Obviously, I'm talking and going through strategy, so we're missing the entry point. But let's say I like the uptrend. I'm afraid it might pull back, so I'm going to use protection. So I do 2 days protection. I do, I don't know, half a lot. And I see it would cost me 1,400. Well, maybe I don't want to spend that much for protection, so I do a quarter of a lot. Maybe I'm willing to risk about 1% of my account, which would mean I need a smaller trade. 0.2, that's 20 ounces of gold, would cost me $578. If this went up to the suggested take profit up there on 4,080, 4,100, so let's go in the middle, 4,090, I would make a little bit more than the protection cost me. With this setup, it doesn't make sense to do that, because it would go to my take profit, and best case scenario, I make back what I already paid for protection. So in this case, I don't like the protection setup for that short of a take profit. So because of the way the cost run is there, I think I'm better off with a stop loss. So in this case, if I put my stop loss down below 4,026, below this first support level, so let's say I put my stop loss at 4,020. Okay. And I put my take profit at 4,090, middle of this take profit zone. Okay, I'm still risking the cost of that protection, but I don't pay that up front. You understand? If this goes up and wins, that's all profit, because I didn't pay 600 for protection up front, which would end up making me about break even if I did that. So when you're paying for protection with AvaProtect, you want to be where you have maybe a longer take profit, where you can make a lot more than the protection cost. With the shorter take profit, I'm better off using a stop loss, because maybe I don't lose that and I don't pay that cost up front. So I'm looking at this and seeing my take profit's a little better than my risk. My risk is around 1% of my balance, or maybe a hair over. So maybe I go 0.18. Okay, I get to where I'm closer to about 1% of my balance, or whatever amount you're comfortable risking per trade. Could be 0.5% of your balance, could be 2% if you're more aggressive, but at least it calculates it for you. And then once I see the setup and I'm happy with my potential profit and my risk, then I go ahead and take the trade. Okay, so now I'm in on a market move. Just to review, why did I not use AvaProtect? In this case, the take profit is so close with that technical signal that it doesn't make sense to pay the protection up front which is how AvaProtect works, yeah, sure, then I can be patient for 2 days. But if my take profit's so close, I'm barely going to make more than what the protection cost. And if the trade goes downward and loses, I don't lose anything more, but I also lost the cost of the protection. So in this case, shorter term move may be better with a stop loss. And we did have the technical confirmation of an uptrend. So in this setup, we have two support levels in our favor. This one here, which was resistance, resistance, resistance. That's today's most recent resistance. Once you break through the resistance with a breakthrough candle, which just happened while we were looking at it, that breakthrough candle, it looks better on a 5-minute chart, right? Looks bigger. This breakthrough candle shows momentum, and it's a technical breakthrough of this resistance. Like I said many times, pending orders are just waiting to enter when you break the resistance, because that confirms an uptrend, confirms momentum. Now, sometimes it's a false breakthrough. It breaks through and then pulls right back down. It can happen, which is why you manage the trade size and where your stop loss will be, etc. But many times those breakthrough candles carry on. It's a sign of some fundamental news that's in your favor, which is why we read the technical side of things, because the fundamental news is built into the technical patterns. You can look at a chart like this and understand that each time you see an upward momentum like this, breaking resistance levels and creating higher support levels, each time you see that happen, from a technical perspective, there's a fundamental story behind that. And a purely technical trader will say, I don't care what the story is. I can trade with these technical patterns and know that if it breaks the resistance level, I know there's fundamental news behind it. And if it doesn't break the resistance, then I don't enter. That's one type of strategy, one type of trading. We talked about it beforehand, just a quick summary of what's the fundamental news right now. And so we understood there, before we even looked at gold, we understood there might be fundamental reason for gold to have pressure to go up. And sure enough, as soon as we open the chart, it breaks the resistance and goes to a new all-time high. Okay? At some point, the momentum will die and there'll be a pullback, right? But for scalpers, this type of strategy would have already brought you profit, because it spiked, what, $10, almost $8 above this resistance level. If your pending order was just a couple dollars above the resistance, you already took $7 or $8 or $5 per ounce profit. You could have already gotten out. Okay? That's what we call scalping. The signal from Trading Central wasn't a scalp, but more of a medium range distance take profit, which is up here. A bit more patient than a scalp move. But it's nice that that happened while we were looking at it, because it fits exactly what we summarized fundamentally in terms of which way we feel the wind was blowing. And it shows you how easily then, if you take advantage of these resistance levels and wait for a breakthrough, how you can catch a breakthrough candle with momentum. And of course, it pulls back then, many times, challenges the support level before either reversing or bouncing higher. We'll see what happens. It looks like it wants to keep pushing up, and we'll see if that trend continues. From our perspective, we entered after the strong breakthrough, so we're slightly negative right now, but we'll see how it carries out maybe by tomorrow. Okay, it feels like it's a good technical setup. We'll see if the fundamental news doesn't change. Probably that'll move maybe up towards our take profit, but we will see. Any questions, comments on anything that we looked at there on gold, or the use and non-use of AvaProtect as a risk management tool? If you have any questions about how that whole setup works, you can ask that as well. I pulled up this chart here in the open trade section because I want to show you that it's very easy to adjust your take profit and stop loss as well. So as you look at the chart, you can take a look and see, okay, here's my stop loss. And maybe you decide, you know what, I want to put this below the next support level here too, because this was the line from Trading Central. So I just adjusted my stop loss. I'm risking a little bit more, and I didn't have to type it. I can just drag the line down, similar to what you do on MetaTrader platform, And so you can just drag the line down and hit reset my stop loss. If I change my mind, I can slide it back up if I want to risk the amount I originally wanted to risk, and I'm only below the first support level. Okay, and I can drag it up further as well. I can adjust it at any time. Same with the take profit. Maybe I decide, I'd rather be at the beginning of this take profit zone here rather than in the middle of the two lines from the signal. You can move those at any time that you wish, and it automatically adjusts that for you on the live trade. I'm going to move it right back to the middle of that zone now. Okay, so very simple to adjust the trades once they've been opened. All right, so let's take a look at something different. Major indices, are they climbing? Especially in the U.S. now, are they bouncing back from the fear of the government shutdown? And, like I said, the German 40, other indices have been climbing with more momentum. They weren't so affected by this whole U.S. government shutdown thing. But as we look at the U.S. 500, the U.S. 30, the U.S. Tech, what we'll see is they've also shrugged off now those fears. Okay, 5-minute candles. You want to talk about a breakthrough candle? It happened just a while ago. Okay, remember the strategy I said, you find resistance. This was just earlier today. Resistance, 1, 2, 3 points of contact. You can see it's trying to break, trying to break, trying to break. And then if you know the wind is blowing up, if you just summarize before you start doing your technical strategy and say, okay, I know the U.S. is more than likely to cut interest rates, maybe multiple times still this year. And maybe you've paid attention to the headlines and you see some of the data came in worse than expected again in the U.S. with some of the economic numbers on the economic calendar. And you're understanding that the markets like the idea of more rate cuts and that there's a greater expectation of that. And so if those things you understood, and then you see this trying to break the resistance, trying to break the resistance over and over. So you put a pending order above the resistance, that if it breaks the resistance, you expect a breakthrough candle. We saw one live on gold, that the breakthrough candle was larger than all the candles near it. And you see that happened a little bit earlier today with the US 500. You see the size of all these candles down here, okay? And then all of a sudden, the breakthrough candle, look how large it is. And look how it carried on the next couple 5-minute candles. That's where you get your scalp profit for scalpers. You just wait with your pending order for a breakthrough. Many times, the longer that resistance held, and the more fundamental news is that backs up the move, if it's at least better than neutral with the fundamental side of things, then this technical strategy can work better. And you see, because the fundamental news was on the side of breaking this resistance, and it was a nice technical resistance level, you see the size of the breakthrough candle and the momentum. So easy scalp trade, they have a pending order above that resistance, and there it went. Okay, now longer term move, is there a signal on this? I think there is. Let's see, US 500. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a buy, and it's a buy signal. Okay, this signal was there earlier today as well. So just by following the technical signals, you'd already already hit the take profit. You see, it says the market has already reached the key level. Okay, a key level. There's more than one key level. It reached the first take profit suggestion. That's the first key level. There's a second one here. Okay, again, where do these numbers come from for the take profit? We're at all-time highs on a lot of these instruments. So you see it's a round number again, 6,800. Okay, it's the next round number if there's not a resistance level to look at. I think the US 500 actually maybe is below, it is below the all-time high. So let's see on this one if there's an actual resistance at 6,800. So as we take a look, there is, okay? So when we look at the 4-hour candles, it's almost at the all-time high. It's actually a real resistance level here, which is also the all-time high. That's the last resistance level is 6,800, okay? And just like we were expecting, maybe gold will reverse when it gets to 4,100, which is the next round number. You see this one already reversed multiple times from a round number from 6,800. This was climbing last week or earlier this week, and it reached that next round number, 6,800, and down it went. There was no resistance. It was an all-time high. And so that became the resistance. And now it was resistance twice, 3 times, and now a 4th time we're at that all-time high price. So it looks like it's going to try to break the all-time high. And if it does, then maybe it reaches the top of this take profit zone or higher. I feel like it's a bit late on this one for the signal, for the short-term signal, because it already broke through and it already reached the take profit. But this shows you the power of technical strategies where you see the resistance. Just check the big driving stories. Is the fundamental news on the side of the signal? And that's how you can filter which signals you want to follow and which ones you don't. A lot of times I have clients ask me, hey, I follow the signals, but I lose as much as I win. They're like 50-50, so they don't trust the signals. And my question then is, did you filter the signals? Did you take a look at which signals match the most recent fundamental news? And usually the answer is no. And if you do check which signals match better the current fundamental news, then you start to see maybe a better percentage in terms of successful signals. If you can only trade the signals you trust the most based on which way the wind is blowing, so to speak, with the fundamental news. And those signals that are working against the most recent news, the most recent fundamental momentum, maybe avoid those signals. Okay, so this already hit the take profit. Doesn't surprise me that we see a pullback. Why is it pulling back now? It's right at the all-time high. That's like the ultimate resistance level when you reach the all-time high. So it's not a coincidence. It's like the exact price, exact same spot once, twice, and now a 3rd time it's pulling back. But I personally, I don't think it's done testing that resistance. It wouldn't make, the market wouldn't make its way all the way back up to that resistance level at the all-time high. I don't believe, without maybe putting up a better fight right now to break it. So I'm feeling like it'll probably break this resistance. We'll see. But it's also a little late for this signal because we're so near the top of the take profit zone. This is just an example of check the signals earlier in the day. And if they align with your fundamental idea of what's going on, and you like the technical setup like this one with the resistance and waiting for a breakthrough candle, you could have put a pending order here a long time ago, earlier today, and already have hit your take profit. Okay, so it's an example of a successful signal, not necessarily something that's a great entry point to trade on right now if you're looking at short-term moves, because it obviously could pull back from that resistance in the short term. All right, but a very nice setup that was, technically speaking. Any questions, comments? Let me pause for a moment. Okay, so someone joined a bit late and they're asking, what is the fundamental news that I'm talking about? Okay, so initially there were pullbacks in the US market a little bit, and we saw that like back here. Okay, you see this pullback on the 4-hour candles. This was fear of the government shutdown that's ongoing in the US. It's not as bad as sometimes people think it is. It's non-essential offices are kind of temporarily shut down, non-essential employees. The essential parts of the government still function. So the markets have kind of shrugged that off. And the fundamental news that's more positive, that seems to be the momentum, is the expectation of more rate cuts in the US. And by lowering interest rates, that makes it cheaper and easier for businesses to expand, to hire. It makes it more affordable for people to use credit to buy things, to get business loans. So it loosens things up, and the markets like that if the expectation is more rate cuts. And because there's been some data that's come in out of the US over the past week that's been weaker than expected, rather than being sad about the bad economic numbers coming in, the markets are really happy because that means there's an increased likelihood of stronger rate cuts to come. And by rate cuts, I mean the federal interest rate. And so the interest rate was raised up to try and bring down inflation. It's done a great job of doing that. And now things have slowed down so much that the markets are begging for lower interest rates to speed things back up. Although the markets keep hitting all-time highs, right? So an anti-inflationary safe haven being gold also is hitting all-time highs. So at the same time, the markets are cheering the optimism about more rate cuts to come. People are also buying gold because, hey, rate cuts means a weaker U.S. dollar. And the U.S. is behind kind of on that because the UK, the EU, Australia, they've all done multiple rate cuts where the U.S. was not doing it. They were holding steady, although the Trump administration was screaming to anyone who would listen that Jerome Powell's not doing his job and there should be rate cuts sooner and larger rate cuts. Finally, he did a rate cut this last FOMC meeting. We'll see if it was a good idea or not. I mean, the rush into gold maybe shows fear of inflation coming back from rate cuts, but you see the indices, the equities are cheering it as well and rising to all-time highs. But that's the fundamental news really that's kind of behind the optimism on the markets. They love the idea of lower interest rates. And so that's part of what's going on here. Very good question. And it's good. Sometimes people join late, they ask questions, but it's good to repeat it anyways. So the repetition for everybody kind of gets that concept through. Here's the gold trade that we took earlier. We see the breakthrough candle and we see it's trying to continue. We might be in a small profit by now, but we'll see how that carries out. We see it's not one of those breakthroughs on the technical breakthrough of the candle that pulled right back immediately. Why is that? Because the fundamental news is on your side more. And that's where you might find more success with those technical signals, is trying to take trades that the technical side lines up with the current fundamental wind, as you might see it when you check the latest headlines regarding the macroeconomic things that are going on, in this case with government shutdown and rate expectations, rate cut expectations in the US, etc. And it doesn't hurt to take a peek at the larger market. The German 40 had an all-time high, other indices are climbing nicely. So it only makes sense that you might feel there's in general positive momentum on the equities. And then you look specifically at a signal from Trading Central on the US 500 saying to buy, and maybe that makes then more sense to you because you have confirmatory movements from other segments of the global market as well. Okay. All right, I think this is a good place to stop. Thank you for the questions. It's helpful for others who might also be thinking the same thing, but haven't typed the question in the chat box. So the more questions, the better in these sessions. But the point that I'm making in this session is, as you look at the technical signals coming into our platform and into our app from Trading Central, try to align the fundamental news with the signals. And if they contradict each other, if the most recent fundamental news doesn't fit the technical setup, then maybe ignore those signals. It just happens that the first two signals we looked at, gold and the US 500, they kind of align with what we expected before we looked at the signals. And they matched what we thought should be happening. And the technical setup was beautiful. We saw gold break the resistance level with a breakthrough candle as we were looking at it. And then we also, looking back, see that the US 500 did the same sort of technical breakthrough earlier today. Okay? And so very simple strategy. Resistance level, pending order above the resistance in the direction that you think the fundamental news fits as well, and waiting for that technical breakthrough, and there it goes, and you get an easy scalp if you want to make a quick $40 or $50 profit in this case. Or let it go, because I think maybe the momentum could continue, so then I let it go a little further. All right, everybody, thank you for joining. We're going to have another session. I will have another session tomorrow, earlier in the day, and we'll focus a little more completely on the fundamental side. And We'll spend a little bit of time on the technicals because they still are important, but we'll look at the economic calendar, we'll look at the market buzz for articles, we'll show you the other tools in our web trader and in our app that give you more fundamental news. And then we'll take a look at the movements, obviously, from the technical perspective and see what makes sense as well. But we'll look at some ideas how to trade off the economic calendar, on past announcement data, etc. There's some nice tools built into our economic calendar and in our market buzz as well. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining. And if you can make it tomorrow, 11 a.m. UK time, we'll do the fundamental analysis webinar as well. All right, everybody, bye for now. Good luck with your trading.